This is where the big boys play, huh? We ain't here to play. At the total combined weight. At the total combined weight of 589 pounds.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, at well over 500 pounds, this is where the big boys play.
All right, welcome to the show, everybody. This is at a combined weight. We're looking at the July 15th, 1996 episode of WCW Monday Nitro. I am your host, Charlie Dudley, joined as always by the esteemed Robert McElroy.
What's happening, Charles?
Just talking some Nitro at one of your favorite venues.
Just like so-and-so who I hate is my boy.
Well, you said that you liked them being at MGM, you fuck.
I don't hate it. I don't like, I'm not marking out. I'm not marking out over it.
Not a huge fan of it.
And we'll get there. We'll get back to the regular sized large venues, and it'll be that much more trash that's thrown in the ring.
Yeah.
This is WCW Monday Nitro 44. It takes place July 15th, 1996. I thought this was a solid show. I thought it had 3 matches on there that I would classify as, on a 5-star scale, I'm calling them 3.5, 4-star matches.
Really?
We'll get into them. I thought there were some fine matches on here, and there's a little bit of history too. There's some historic happenings as well,
as always.
Yeah.
Show opens. Shivani says Hogan and the Outsiders will be there. Pushes throughout the show that Hogan is now Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and the negative aspects of Hogan are all deemed to be Hollywood. It becomes a negative connotation in the word. The word Hollywood became a negative connotation as it relates to the wrestling business. Like he's gone Hollywood on us. First thing that I noticed in the commentary that opened the show is Larry Zbyszko suggests the NWO is going to recruit more members. Pushes the idea of them bringing in more outsiders, or are they going to start pulling in guys from the WCW ranks? And then they show the actual footage of Bash at the Beach, not the stills. They show the actual video footage. But I didn't remember this as a kid where they had started pushing the idea that more people were going to come.
I don't remember that either. And I like the fact that they did, and here's why. My biggest problem, even at the time, as a kid could suspend his belief. My biggest issue with this storyline is that just weeks prior to, for instance, Eric Bischoff joining NWO when we get there, just several weeks prior, he gets jackknife powerbombed by the very guys trying to take over the company he's GMing.
Right.
So how do you then, after getting your ass kicked like that, join them just willy-nilly? I'm on y'all's side now. You had so many guys just turn. This explains why. Throughout the show, they explained why. Zbyszko, like you said, he begged the question, who's next? Who's next? At one point, they talk about how much money Hogan has. Like, Hogan has a lot of cash. Right. He can just recruit. And then Hogan ties it together even more at the very end of the show. We'll get there and we'll talk about it then, but they explain. There was a lot of nice foreshadowing.
Oh, yeah. That's what's good, I think, and that's probably one of the most enjoyable things about us doing this podcast is being able to know the end result and going back and being able to look at it retrospectively and saying, wow, they were dropping some hints of where they were going, and it leads you to know that they had an idea or a direction in mind.
Yes.
And with this, I mean, I know that they explained the Bischoff thing later, but this kind of it lets you know that said, well, is it going to be more outsiders? Are we going to have defections from WCW? Do we have guys that are already a part of it that are inside of the company? And it becomes an issue where, Tony and Larry even talk about it, how they shouldn't trust anybody. Don't trust me. Well, why should you trust me? Don't trust me. I don't trust you. Nobody should trust anybody. And that's kind of that overarching theme, and we'll talk about it specifically in one match that I wanted to point out. Well, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Open the show, Fire and Ice against the Steiner brothers. So we're back to the tag division opening the show. The Steiners, for several weeks, had been a part of the opener, whether it be in a tag match or singles matches with other tag teams. Flair, Sting, the Giant, Macho Man, they're all in Japan working with New Japan. WCW had some dealings with New Japan to where they'd have talent come in and they'd swap back and forth. And at this time, they had some big main eventers over in Japan working with New Japan, running some super shows. And it leaves them vulnerable for an attack from the NWO. And they pushed the hell out of this the whole show about how they wanted them. Schiavone was like, I wish they were here. I don't feel safe. I don't like the Giant, but I wish he was here to protect us. And we saw the guys who stepped up to protect them, but this is where we get the initial announcement that none of these guys are there. So you don't have to wonder why none of these guys come out later in the show. Another interesting thing that I thought was very good and was really, really smartly done, and I definitely wouldn't have caught it as a kid, but definitely catch it now as a discerning wrestling fan adult. They mentioned that Mr. Nanny debuts on TBS, and they kind of begrudgingly push it. They say, Hogan brings up the fact that Billionaire Ted didn't give him a movie, but surprisingly enough, tomorrow night on TBS sees the debut of Mr. Nanny. So they're all but telling you, make sure you tune in tomorrow night on TBS and watch Mr. Nanny. But they're like, kind of running Hogan down. That was well done.
That was so well done. How brilliant to have that type of synergy with all of Turner Network Television's product, with all of Ted Turner's media, period. That's really great. And to keep that kayfabe thing going of, look, he has this chip on his shoulder about Ted Turner. His movie's going to debut tomorrow night on TBS. What's he so butthurt about? He has a show on Thunder in Paradise.
Which was the lead-in to Nitro.
Yeah, which was the lead-in to Nitro. What's he so butthurt about? I thought that was absolutely very well done. Like you say, pushed throughout the show. And, yeah, it really makes me wish I would have caught on to that as a kid, because I would have bought that hook, line, and sinker. Oh, my God. He really doesn't have an axe to grind. And he's just...
Well, I mean,
being a dick.
Yeah. They're poking holes in his ideas that he has an axe to grind. But, the television premiere of Mr. Nanny, and, they run down and talk about how Thunder in Paradise precedes Nitro as the lead-in. And I always thought Thunder in Paradise was first of all, it was not very good. But I always thought it was cool how some WCW guys were on there. One of the first times I ever saw it, it used to come on just like randomly throughout the day on like Saturday. Or maybe it was a lead-in to Saturday night or something, and I saw Sting on there. And so I started watching it more often just so I could see who else, as far as like wrestlers were concerned, were on the show. And I didn't see tons of them, but there were enough. Well, Sting was like a crazy psycho killer, I think, on this one episode.
Well, I talk about it on our Hot Tags show, but my brother was a big fan of it, like a bigger fan than me. Like his best memories of wrestling when I would watch it, because I'm the oldest. The little brothers are gonna watch what the hell I want to watch.
Right.
But his best memory of it was, well, there's two. Sting, he thought that was character was very compelling, and Thunder in Paradise. He loved getting to watch that with me. I guess it was the boat aspect of it, the heroic.
Oh, they had some cool stuff. The boat
on.
was great. Explosions were cool. I mean, it was not well written. The plots weren't great, but if you're looking for shit to explode and the good guy wins most of the time, Thunder in Paradise is your show. And Hulk Hogan was kind of cool, and I mean, it was not a bad show.
Well, Hogan was also a lot more over with me than he was with you, so I would have been more, by default, more of a mark for it than that.
Yeah, I didn't care about Hogan so much as I liked the boat was cool, and I wanted to see who the guest stars were. And it wasn't like it was now to where you could look on the guide and see or Google IMDb. I would have had to hop on AOL and fucking internet making those damn noises and shit to try to figure out if anybody was going to be on Thunder in Paradise. It was also a wrestler.
No, I didn't. I didn't mess with all that.
Well, they have the internet in Columbiana, probably.
But and if they did, I didn't mess with AOL. That was for everybody else. I wasn't an AOL guy ever. I didn't.
Really?
I didn't mess.
When
weirdly
did you get
enough,
on the internet? Like what year?
Oh, dude. Oh God, that's a good question, because I guess pre-internet, like just pre-internet, I would break out Encarta, the Encarta 90 whatever year.
Yeah.
But no, but it was called Encarta, and it would be a fascinating thing. Well, me and my friend at the time would try to find boobies, but to no avail.
Right. It's what you did as a young kid with internet. You would.
Well, and we were fighting a losing battle by trying to get on Encarta to see boobs.
Right. Of course.
No, we did have to go try to find Dad's Playboys or type in 22, which was Cinemax, because we didn't have Cinemax. But if you type in the number, it'll come on there. We had Showtime and HBO, but then I had friends who didn't have Showtime and HBO, and at the time it was channels 24 and 25. You could just type in 24, the shit would come up. So the parents would have to go through extra measures though to make sure that their kids couldn't just type in the numbers and bring it up that way, because there were those measures. I remember what every channel was. TNT was channel 15. I would put it on channel 15 to watch Monday Nitro. ESPN.
See, I remember that USA was channel 25 and TNT was channel 27. Yeah, because I used to put those on the previous channel and do the jump back and forth all the time when we had the cable box. And I don't remember what they were when we moved, but it's strange the things that, the little details that you remember. Talking about the fuzzy boobs on Cinemax or trying to look them up online and stuff. But yeah, I had the internet we had dial-up, and I think it was 95, 96, around this time, because I remember getting on some wrestling chat rooms and finding out stuff on wrestling. And I just couldn't get enough information and stuff back then. I thought it was really cool finding out the wrestlers' real names and thought that some of them were ridiculous.
See, I had to rely on the kayfabe WWF magazine or WCW magazine that you get from the big ass wall of magazines in the Piggly Wiggly.
Right.
That's kind of all I had.
Piggly Wiggly.
I got by. Mother insists that at one point I had a 3-ring binder that had pages throughout it with taped articles and just cutouts of the various wrestlers from the stills in the magazines.
I don't doubt it.
Man, I'd love to find that damn thing.
I don't doubt it. I'm sure it's just nice and fucking terrible looking too. Like rough tape jobs. It wasn't like, nice or pristine. It was just like slapping them down on there and just so uncoordinated with your taping and just tape and dirt and shit all over the damn tape and the articles and whatnot.
He's taking shots at my arts and crafts here is definitely what this is. I would cut out the little characters pretty uniformly, I guess. Right. Anyway, so before this just turns into a 90s nostalgia show, I guess we'll attempt to make it a Nitro nostalgia show.
Yeah, let's
Fire and Ice versus the Steiners. It's the first match of the show. I mean, no, everything we've discussed has been relevant indirectly. It all comes back to wrestling anyway.
It does. It all is in that rabbit hole of wrestling.
Yeah, Channel 15 is TNT. That's where I'd get my wrestling. Channel 18 was USA, where Raw was.
So what'd you think of the match?
I just thought it was an all right match. Steiners get the win. They had good tag team action, WCW. I was never let down by the way they booked their tag teams for the most part.
Did you see the botch finish at the end? How Rick Steiner does the suplex, and he's supposed to be a belly to back with a bridge, and Ice Train kind of rolls over to where Rick has to roll over and just slide on the pin. It did not look good.
I missed that, but no, at one point in the match, Rick Steiner does a belly to belly suplex on Train. It looks like it could have killed him. I mean,
oh yeah, it's a great one. It's a really good.
He puts him on his head, like he suplexes him back there, and
Ice Train was not a small dude.
No,
not a small dude by any stretch of imagination. Post match, you have an entrance area segment with Mean Gene, Big Bubba, Jimmy Hart, Kevin Sullivan, your boy. Jimmy Hart says Dungeon of Doom is targeting the Four Horsemen, gonna destroy them. And then Bubba cuts a promo on Luger, talks about his concussion and detached retina. Big no-no these days, talking about him wrestling with a concussion. It doesn't matter. He's going to tough through it. That would not fly in today's world. No, it's interesting to watch this kind of stuff and see what they push as like injuries and how like legitimate. He obviously didn't have a concussion or a detached retina, but how the world's changed 20 years later and how guys, you can't even mention the fact that they are wrestling through a concussion, especially with all the WWF or WWE's getting sued every day these days.
Yeah, no, that wouldn't fly at all. And it's funny, like it was 20 years ago, but you would think in 1996 they would have been a little bit further along with it. But I think a lot of research has been done here within like the last 5 to 10. Like a whole lot has come out in regards to concussions, CTE, etc. So, but I wasn't a huge fan of this promo segment.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm not. It's like I said on one of our previous shows, I've not liked what they've done with the Horsemen very much. I don't care about the Dungeon. Maybe I should care as Dungeon of Doom versus Horsemen. We got Hall of Famers and future Hall of Famers abound throughout each faction, but
right.
I mean, are you that? I'm not that excited and haven't been
about really.
And they haven't even. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens going forward. Just after this promo segment, we get another Glacier promo. We'll get another one of these during the show.
I'm ready for him to debut already.
Me too.
One thing that I wanted to bring up in the interview segment before we move on is how Sullivan says Benoit got too personal on the pay-per-view.
Ooh.
Talks about woman coming out and all that kind of stuff, and we talked about that, but I thought it was a nice little... I definitely wouldn't have picked that up when I was a kid, but, knowing their history, knowing their background, it was very, very interesting to see him bring that up.
That is.
Then there's a backstage segment, if you want to talk about Fire and Ice backstage segment with your boy, Teddy Long.
Who's fatter than shit.
He is, dude. He's so tiny these days.
He is. So
and he was so tiny when he was like the GM for SmackDown for a while. And compared to what he was back then, I mean, good job, Teddy, for losing weight, but I'm not going to not call him fat as shit when he's fat as shit.
True. This is very true. Well, they have this segment, Gene Okerlund with Fire and Ice. They're kind of arguing as to how they could have won the match, how it just went to hell in a handbasket on them. Teddy Long comes along to try to break them up a little bit, and Scott Norton, being the hothead his character can be from time to time, pushes Teddy Long back. He falls on his ass, pushes him like hands to the face. It looked good.
Yeah,
it was a nice little way to get some heat, because like that is, it's like, wow. And I guess part of what made it so good looking, part of what made it so chock full of heat was that Teddy Long's not a wrestler.
Right.
You're going to put your hands on a non-wrestler?
Just a little small, fat manager.
Yeah, fatter than shit.
I thought it was good. They're pushing the fact that there might be a little breakup between Fire and Ice. Yeah. There was a instance in the match where Ice Train does a big splash, the ice splash, if you will, on Scott Norton. So, they're building to that eventual breakup that, likely happens with almost every tag team.
And I like the fact that, honestly, it made me excited about some of the matches that they'll have. Like, I think they'll put on some good matches together, and here's one of the reasons. They're both big dudes. They have similar styles, but even more so, they've been a tag team for a long time. They know each other very well. They've been on the road together, hanging out together, this, that, and the other for the longest.
Yeah, it probably won't be a good match. I don't remember it being a good match.
I'll remain optimistic.
Yeah,
what I'll do. You
do that.
Shit all over it. You shit.
I will.
I'll hope for the best. White people hope. Things don't go wrong.
Up next, we had Dean Malenko versus Billy Kidman. Billy Kidman looked so young here. So young. And we see Jimmy Hart as Malenko's coming out, trying to recruit Malenko to the Dungeon of Doom. I thought Kidman got some offense, looked pretty good. I thought his tights looked pretty terrible. It looked like he had taken duct tape and written his name on his tights.
Well, this wouldn't be the first time on this show that we've ripped apart the costume department over at WCW. They haven't done a tremendous job with their entrance music or people's clothing.
Yeah, it looked terrible. It was just it said Billy down one leg and Kidman down the other, and it looked like he had cut pieces of duct tape and put them down the side of his legs. But other than that, solid match.
It was a solid match. I love Dean Malenko's sense of urgency and how you as a viewer know he's pissed off because he feels like that cruiserweight title just kind of slipped through his hands, that he could have easily prevented that from happening. So he's good and angry, and we haven't seen a lot of really great heel stuff out of Malenko, but we're starting to. We're definitely starting to. I love how he could have pinned Billy Kidman twice, then decides he'll put him in the Texas Cloverleaf and beats him that way. I thought that was a fun little way to see it end. It's like, you know what? I'm going to be a glutton for punishment here and just kick this kid's ass. I'm that mad.
Yeah, the catalyst to his offense that ends the match for Malenko was Kidman missing the shooting star press. Kidman misses the shooting star press, and then Malenko hits him with a barrage of power bombs, and then he ends up doing the Texas Cloverleaf to get the submission win. This is more of that undercard cruiserweight level matches that would define the Nitro era, that you would have kind of nothing on top or just angles on top and then matches underneath that would keep you tuning in. There's something for everybody. If you really like the angles and the drama of wrestling, then you came for the NWO and the NWO angles. But if you really enjoyed the in-ring product, you watch guys like Dean Malenko and you watch guys like Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero later in the show.
No doubt about it. I even had a friend around this period of time told me once, he's like, dude, the cruiserweights, that's what I watch it for. That is the best thing on the show. And while there was a part of me that wanted to kind of argue with him a little bit and say like, dude, no, you got the NWO angle, you have all this awesome stuff happening, I couldn't be mad at him.
No.
He had a good, my friend, and this is 5th grade, so he was like, what a good way to look at the product, I think, looking back on it. I couldn't get mad at him. He had a point. He had a valid point for that being the reason why I watched the show. There were such good matches.
Yeah, the cruiserweights were my dad's favorite part of WCW. You know, your parents a lot of times will watch wrestling with you if you're on the main TV, and they'll just, you know, sit and spend time watching it. And my dad would always talk about, you know, make fun of the fact that that's a little bit more unbelievable. I think that's probably where I get my lack of disbelief about everything as far as like the wrestling business is concerned. But yeah, he really enjoyed watching, you know, Malenko and Kidman and Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio. He loved the Lucha guys, loved Ultimo Dragon. He just loved the fact they flipped around and they did cool shit. So up next, Mean Gene had a segment with Kevin Green. Kevin Green's there, about to start training camp, cuts a promo on the NWO and Mongo McMichael. Even mentions he's a Hulkamaniac, believed in the praying, the training, the vitamins. Runs down Hogan, and then he said he's there looking for Mongo before his plane leaves. What'd you think of this?
I'm not liking anything that they do with Kevin Green, and it's a good thing he's an Auburn guy, because if he weren't, I would just want him off of my television. I'm not a big fan of it. Now, mind you, for a football guy, he's doing a decent job with wrestling and with promoing, and keeping his composure on live TV alone is an impressive feat to me. But I'm not, it's like I said before, I've not liked hardly anything they've done with the Horsemen.
Yeah, I haven't really enjoyed, I've never really enjoyed much of the crossover stuff. And despite the fact that I really enjoy Kevin Green, like you said, he's an Auburn guy, you know, he graduated from where we went to school. Just
recently inducted in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, which is, it's interesting that we're doing this 20 years later.
Yeah.
And just recently, and we're getting to review a part of his career that involved wrestling and football, like right there toward the end. Like, I think it's kind of funny. We didn't plan that, you know.
No,
that just happened.
Up next, Harlem Heat versus Rough and Ready. Rough and Ready's Mike Enos and Dick Slater. For those of you who don't know who Mike Enos and Dick Slater are, Mike Enos was known as the Mauler, and he was part of the Beverly Brothers in WWF. He was the Mauler in WCW not 3, 4, 5 weeks ago. Scott Hall interrupts his match. Mike Enos was the guy who was wrestling when Scott Hall, his initial invasion took place. So he's in this team with Dirty Dick Slater. Dirty Dick Slater, 70s and 80s, pretty decent sized star for the like Mid-Atlantic NWA Jim Crockett Promotions around there. Interesting to know he wrestled in Knoxville for Ron Fuller, who is the brother of Colonel Rob Parker, who was his manager in this match. He also teamed with Dusty Rhodes and Cowboy Bob Orton. One of the biggest angles, which I recently watched when I got the network, I say recently, in the last like several years when the network became a thing, Dirty Dick Slater and Cowboy Bob Orton attack Ric Flair, and they're real good friends with Harley Race, which leads to the steel cage match at Starrcade 83, Flair for the Gold. Ric Flair, Harley Race. If you've never seen it and you have the network, Starrcade 83, Flair for the Gold, the steel cage match between Ric Flair and Harley Race is really, really, really good. really good. And Dick Slater was a part of the build to that match. He and Bob Orton attacked Ric Flair, and they're kind of seconds to Harley Race in that. Anyway, so Dick Slater, Mike Enos, their tag team, they're rough and ready, going up against Harlem Heat, the WCW World Tag Team Champions. The story behind this whole thing is that Colonel Parker and Sherry are together. Parker manages Rough and Ready, but he's the promoter of Harlem Heat. And they talk about how there's kind of a conflict of interest. And Sherry's the manager of Harlem Heat. And this match was a decent match. It was more of a backdrop for what I just mentioned with Colonel Parker and Sherry. What did you think about it?
It was a pretty good match. I was glad that Rough and Ready were able to get some offense and it wasn't a total squash. This was a title. This match was for the tag team titles.
Right.
In no way did I ever feel like Rough and Ready would be a threat to that at all.
No.
Just right before the match, Harlem Heat cuts a promo in that little TV package. You get a really lovely close-up of those belts. Those are the sexiest tag belts ever. I think they're nicer than the old school WWF tag belts.
No.
That's my opinion.
Your
that's
opinion
my
sucks.
That's your fucking opinion sucks. I love those damn belts.
The original
WWF
the original WWF belts are way better than the WCW belts.
Dude, for the most part, but this is one time where I give WCW a leg up.
Nope.
Yeah. Whatever. I'm going to do one of these.
Nope. You're wrong. I would agree with you, but then we'd both be wrong.
They're sexy belts. So, not a bad match. Sherry kisses one of the members of Rough and Ready.
Dick Slater.
It's Dick Slater is the one she kisses? Okay. And then the roll up for the win for Harlem Heat. They retain those fucking gorgeous belts.
You could buy those belts. Go ahead and buy them.
I don't have money to buy belts.
Buy belts. Buy belts. Buy them.
Dude, that belt is incredible. Charles Edward is showing me his flaunting it, his Winged Eagle authentic belt now.
That's the championship belt for our fantasy football, though. That's I won that shit, baby. That's the third time I won it. But anyway, vignette for Rey Mysterio Jr. Interesting to know, the last time we saw a video package vignette for Rey Mysterio Jr. was when the Outsiders stormed the broadcast booth and they had to cut it off. So they tried again. They want to keep Rey fresh in your mind since he's your Cruiserweight champion and he's not on the show. Then we got Kevin Green again. Kevin Green can't find Mongo, so he says he'll be back in February. Again, nothing segment. I love Kevin Green, but I don't want him in my wrestling. I want my wrestlers.
I don't either.
My wrestlers to wrestle.
I don't either. I mean, and as if I needed more reasons to love the guy. Yeah, he dabbled in some wrestling, so that does give me another reason to adore him. However, I'm sick of it.
It's a shitty angle. It's done, and they couldn't follow up with it, and it's poor planning by them if they wanted to follow up with it, you know?
Absolutely.
Up next, you had Medusa and Malia Hosaka, and this is one of the few times you see women's wrestling in Nitro. I don't ever remember seeing that many women's matches on Nitro.
I don't either. As a result, I was very pleasantly surprised. I had almost forgotten about Medusa, and I had forgotten about Hosaka. I never knew. I don't know why I didn't realize this, but like I found myself thinking Hosaka was pretty damn hot.
She was pretty good looking. I
was all about that.
She's young. She's Hawaiian, Japanese descent, obviously, so that makes her that much better.
No, I thought she was good and hot. This was a good match. I remember.
It was a pretty decent match. Dude, it was okay.
It was better than a lot of Divas matches I've seen.
That's not a very good measuring stick, though.
Well, it's not, but think of what I've had to put up with for so many years.
Yeah, but I just put it in perspective of like the women's matches around that era. I mean, Medusa's pretty good, and she had some great matches in WWF. And this is just a backdrop. It's kind of a pushing of she'll face Bull Nakano at Hog Wild in a destroy the bike match.
Another very gimmicky match by WCW.
Yeah, and so we're supposed to believe that Medusa will bring her Harley and Bull Nakano will bring her probably Japanese-made motorcycle. And so are we supposed to believe that Medusa is going to lose and Bull Nakano is going to destroy a Harley in front of 230,000 Harley people? I don't think so.
No, absolutely not.
But,
very, very gimmicky match.
But interesting to note, Bull Nakano and Medusa, they fought for the WWF women's title at SummerSlam 94, which was headlined by none other than Undertaker versus Undertaker and Bret and Owen in a cage. So
hell's bells.
So yeah, there's not that many women in the company at this point. So Medusa has to wrestle these, and I guess WWF did it pretty much at the same time, would bring in, they'd have Medusa or Alundra Blaze and just bring in Japanese women to face her. You know, they had Bull Nakano or Leilani Kai, and Malia Hosaka was her WCW opponent, and she's facing Bull Nakano. And I don't really remember who else was in WCW women's wrestling at the time.
I don't either. They so rarely had women's matches. I was very pleasantly surprised to see this. I enjoyed the match a lot. Remember right before the show I was talking about how we had 3 really fine matches? Well, we've already had one with Malenko and Billy Kidman. I'm counting this as one of them. I loved this.
Yes, I didn't really like this match so much. I thought it was kind of slow and sluggish compared to the matches at the time. I guess you just haven't seen that much old women's wrestling.
Maybe not. Maybe not. Zbyszko gets good and sexist with some of his remarks. A little bit of racism. Zbyszko always throws that in there. Of course, in 2016, that would not fly. Funny how, I mean, just 20 years ago in the mid-90s, and it's totally okay. Like, this was, no backlash was.
No, not at all.
Came of that. You know, so I found that to be interesting.
Yeah, Medusa gets a win with a German suplex with the bridge. It was interesting to see that Hosaka's feet hit the ropes, and then she kind of pulls them back so that she can get pinned cleanly.
I did notice that.
I thought it was hilarious. Medusa can go, and if you're a Japanese woman, if you wrestle in Japan frequently and you're like a Japanese woman in that way, you're going to be able to go because they wrestle really well over there. And over here, a lot of women's wrestling, especially on the mainstream at this time, was shit. And like as you talked about with the Divas, terrible, terrible stuff. Bischoff welcomes us to hour number 2, cuts to Hall and Nash, who are putting up the chiefly spray-painted NWO over the WCW letters. But it was pushed as like a huge deal that, you know, we're taking over, we're going to cover up your letters. And the crowd starts chanting Diesel when they are looking up there. And they didn't even mention, they no-sold the chant.
Of course they did. You know, this was the first time we would see a defacing or something close to a defacing, if you will. There'd be a lot more of this going forward.
Oh, yeah.
So at least it is the birth of that, you know?
You're right.
And I thought it was a nice touch. I did think it was quite chiefed. But no, I thought a fine touch. Like, you know, what the hell are these guys doing? Really?
Yeah. Heenan pushes that they're not alone, that they're not the only ones that are in this organization, pushing the idea of the recruitment that they pushed in hour 1, saying that they've got more people with them, that they just haven't revealed who's with them, which is good that people aren't joining them, that they're just kind of revealing them as the way that they're pushing it. You know?
Yeah.
Which just brings an idea of, you know, kind of secret agents and double agents, that mentality to it. Up next, Arn Anderson and Ming. Kind of a backdrop to push the Dungeon of Doom, destroying the Horsemen, pushing Hog Wild and the Sturgis Rally during this match. Okay match. Barbarian interferes. Ming hits a crescent kick. Looks really, really good. Love Ming. Love Arn Anderson. I wish they could have just wrestled for a while and just torn the house down, but it was basically just a backdrop for an angle.
Pretty much.
To have Barbarian interfere, and the Horsemen are depleted at this point because Mongo's running around doing God knows what. Flair's in Japan, and Benoit's getting ready for his match up next. So
that's basically that. We do get a good Heenan quote. Hog Wild, I thought it was a bowling league in Milwaukee. Thought that was good stuff by him.
I thought it was really, I've forgotten about how much they pushed Hog Wild and how Bischoff had pushed them riding Harleys from Minneapolis to Sturgis for the rally. And they would do like promotional stuff on the way, and he was like welcoming people to ride with them, like riding with them from Minneapolis. They're going to start at the Mall of America, which, you know, that's where Bischoff's from, is Minneapolis. So they're going to start up there, and they're going to ride their Harleys over to Sturgis. And it's just a big to-do. And it's, I guess one of the first times they'd ever done it, I think.
I think they were thinking about it from a synergy standpoint.
Oh, yeah.
What better pairing than a bunch of bikers and wrestling fans? Like, I feel like those shades of gray exist. You know, you can see that throughout wrestling. Like, these days, I've definitely noticed, especially with all the internet smart marks, there's a shade of gray between, like, video game nerds and wrestling fans. Oftentimes
sci-fi would be included in that.
Absolutely. So maybe that was their thinking around the time. Like, these biker guys got to be into wrestling. They'd love to.
And even if they're not, they're the type of crowd that you would enjoy, like fighting, combat sports. You know.
Exactly.
Up next, you had your boy Mongo with the dog. That's why I called him your boy, because he had the dog with him. You always popped when they had the dog.
When I was a kid, I loved when Mongo was on the announce team and he'd have his dog dressed up as something different, and there was always a reason why. I just thought it was, I think of this big, massive former football player with this tiny chihuahua, as you like to call them.
I thought it was bullshit, but...
Yeah, well, you and I don't always see eye to eye, do we?
That's
I think if I were to see such a gimmick now, I would hate it. But now, okay, so Deborah McMichael talks during this, and I don't like when Deborah McMichael talks. And I've
tell us why, Robert.
Dude, and it doesn't even make sense why, because I've spent 97% of my life in the Deep South, and it's her accent that bothers me.
Yeah, her accent's terrible.
Oh, I don't know if she's like maybe adding a few layers on top of a pre-existing accent so she'll be annoying. And if she is trying to be annoying, then kudos, it's working, and good job being a heel wife.
Right.
But at times I like cringed. I was, oh God, please be done.
Well, she's country. Guess where she's from down here.
I thought so.
She's born in Tuscaloosa.
Okay.
Which makes all the sense in the world that she's bumpkins.
Right.
Being from damn Trashcaloosa.
During this, Mongo buries Kevin Green and the Panthers, and it just wasn't that great of a segment. This whole angle sucks.
Yeah, I'm tired of it. I'm glad that Kevin Green's going to football so that they can have Mongo focus on something else. And I'm hoping that I don't remember if the dog makes a cameo appearance, a regular cameo, but I don't need all that shit. We don't need props and dogs being hanging around. You don't, like you said, you don't want to have some giant heel carrying around a dog they dress up. It's fucking ridiculous.
Makes me wonder. God, it makes me wonder, like, where they got it from. Like, how did they just decide? This is what we're gonna do. This is a good idea.
Well, yeah.
It was on the broadcast booth. It was pretty funny. But now that you're healing it up, leave the dog.
You're a fucking 4 horseman, for God's sake. You can't be carrying around a dog that's dressed up. That's horse
It'd
shit.
have been funny. I wish, from a nostalgic standpoint, just so I would pop, that they would have explained why he dressed the dog up in a particular way. It looked like he had like a sombrero on or something. It would have made more sense for him to be wearing like a Chicago Bears helmet.
Yeah, it's stupid.
I got
The
my
whole
dog
thing's
dressed
stupid.
up like a Chicago Bear today because I played for the Chicago Bears.
Or saying that he's more of an athlete than Kevin Green or some shit. I mean, it could have been better, but moving on. Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero. Best match on the show, by far. What you'd expect for these two continues that idea of the cruiserweights or the smaller guys being where you watch wrestling. No angles needed, just wrestling. Even though you had an angle here with Malenko interfering. What are your thoughts on this one?
I loved it a lot. Like you said, I'll echo the sentiment. Best match on the show. And Benoit was just all over Eddie Guerrero. A lot of early offense from him, but I thought the arm drag takeover from Eddie Guerrero was awesome. That's about the first time Eddie initiates a little bit of offense. Just a fantastic match. Of course, Malenko comes out and pushes Benoit into the steel. Like I said previously, man, Malenko with his heeldom, I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Yeah, I thought it was good that Malenko came out, interferes, because it just kind of brings back those memories of, these three guys basically just like killing each other.
Yeah, Guerrero wins via countout, which I did not mention, but those are, God, Malenko versus Benoit. That's fantastic. Dude.
Oh, they have so many good matches. All these guys do. It's they push the fact that Eddie will face Ric Flair at Hog Wild for the U.S. title, and of course Benoit has the backdrop with the Horseman Dungeon of Doom angle, which causes Malenko to come out. He's doing some dirty work for the Dungeon of Doom, and that angle will continue further. Up next, you had Big Bubba, Lex Luger pushed as our main event of the evening. The announcers have been pushing all show about how he's all alone. Sting and Macho aren't there. Pushing his injuries. He's wrestling with a concussion, a detached retina. Interesting to note that all show they've been pushing the fact that the NWO is recruiting guys and bringing in guys that are they going to be bringing in guys that are outsiders or have ties to, without saying it, have ties to WWF. That's what they mean by bringing in outsiders. And Bischoff brings up that Luger actually worked with those two guys up until September of last year, because Luger debuts on the first Nitro re-debuts for WCW after he had been in WWF for a time under his Lex Express gimmick, his American body slamming Yokozuna on the Intrepid type gimmick. But Bischoff kind of drops a hint that, hey, Luger could be a part of the NWO. And it was subtle, but yet kind of pronounced. And it becomes an angle that will kind of come to fruition in the next couple months. But it was very, very interesting to note that Bischoff kind of intimates that, hey, Luger knows these guys well. He worked with them up until he debuted at the Mall of America. Kind of a nothing match. Right. Not a very good match.
Not at all. I didn't like seeing these two lumber around and Lex Luger scream at the top of his lungs.
Oh! Oh!
Nobody, he's the second best screamer in WCW next to Woman.
Yeah. And he's not the type of person you want to hear scream either. But
no.
Outsiders during the match get out of the limo. Bischoff and Heenan are pushing that they're going to be there, that they're there but where did they go? Then they show up, they're sitting on the back of the limo. And then they push the idea of the defections of saying that, maybe some people in WCW are going to switch over to the NWO. And Bischoff says, how many defections will we see? Oh, little do we know that son of a bitch got so many people on that damn, in that gimmick. So many people. You could fill a damn arena with the amount of people that were in the NWO. But it's very, very odd to hear him say that when there's only 3 guys,
Yeah, well, throughout the entire show, the announcers and everybody involved did a great job of pushing this NWO storyline with a lot of foreshadowing, if you will, that they're going to be recruiting, and that's what Hogan touches on in his promo. He talks about how he's going to be recruiting guys from back in the locker room, and the most interesting part about that was he talked about how guys in that locker room have a double loyalty, both to WCW, to Ted Turner writing their checks, and to Hulk Hogan himself. And it's interesting that he said that because there is a hint of truth there. Bret Hart writes in his book about how so many guys had this respect for Hogan because with the success of Hulk Hogan in the 80s came success for wrestling overall. So guys got paid more money when Hogan got paid a lot more money. So Hogan makes a valid point there, and for that reason, I liked the promo. Also, he talks about how he calls the Giant out for Hog Wild, how he wants to make that World Championship belt the NWO belt, which would eventually come to pass.
Yeah, Hogan shows up, and much ado was made about how he had killed the Red and Yellow and killed Hulkamania. And it was very shocking for some, I guess, to see him in the all black. But he had already worn the all black before as he was trying to kind of get his edge back, I guess. He was in a feud with the Giant, and it included the monster truck match, which ended up with Hogan pushing the Giant off of Cobo Hall and supposedly Giant falling to his death, but it didn't happen. And then the Yeti got involved and all that shit. It was a terrible, terrible instance there. Another thing in this match that I really enjoyed, or a post-match with the attack before the promo, is Hogan shakes hands with Bubba, and before the Outsiders beat him down, Bischoff and Heenan kind of are like, oh, God, Bubba, go ahead and do it. But then they beat him down. So Bubba, it looked like he was going to join, but he didn't. And I thought it was kind of cool in the fact that Hogan and Bubba had a relationship in WWF. If you look at a lot of the guys that joined the NWO, which later Bubba does, but it made sense as a fan watching it. You're like, well, oh shit. Because if you were already brought into the storyline that you would watch WWF growing up, and you were a WWF fan, and you knew who Razor and Diesel were when they came over as Hall and Nash, you knew that Big Bubba was Big Boss Man. Okay, you also knew that he was feuding with John Tenta, who used to be Earthquake. So you're thinking like, well, that makes sense, since if Hogan's been in like doing this whole Trojan horse type gimmick to WCW, it would make sense that he would have an old friend like the Big Boss Man or Big Bubba in this case. So it kind of made sense in that vein, but I thought it was, it was definitely too quick to bring out a fourth guy.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you think that they ever induct the original members of NWO into the Hall of Fame? I know these guys made an appearance at WrestleMania 31 for everyone's big-time nostalgic pop with that Triple H versus Sting match. I mean, the only guy right now with a second Hall of Fame ring is Ric Flair, and rightfully so. He goes in as the Nature Boy Ric Flair. He also goes in as a Horseman. Do they do that with these guys ever, you think, if Hogan gets back in good graces with WWE?
Yeah, I mean, I think it all depends on Hogan getting back in good graces, and it also depends on at what incarnation of the NWO do you induct? Do you induct the first 3 guys? Do you induct the first 4? Do you induct 5? Do you induct 6? And it's touchy there. I mean, with the 4 Horsemen, you inducted the you didn't induct the original. You inducted what many people thought was the best with Wyndham instead of Ole Anderson. So with the NWO, I mean, do you induct Big Show as the Giant?
Mm.
Do you induct Sean Waltman as 6? Do you induct Ted DiBiase?
See, I don't think you do.
Do you induct
I don't think
Vincent? Do you induct Conan?
Yeah.
Do you induct Lex Luger with it? I mean, there's so many things, like, where does it end? I mean, do you induct Eric Bischoff as part of the NWO? I mean, that's a good question. That's a good like food for thought type thing.
It is,
but it would be redundant, I feel, if you only inducted the first 3 guys because they're already in the Hall of Fame. You know, I mean, you've already got Kevin Nash, Scott Hall, Hogan in as individuals. There's no real need to induct the NWO. And when they inducted the Horsemen, the other guys got inducted as a part of the Horsemen. They didn't get inducted by themselves. Not saying that they wouldn't have been inducted on their own merits, but that's their first incarnation is in the Horsemen. You know, there's no need to individually induct Barry Windham or Tully Blanchard or Arn Anderson.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you were to induct the best version of the NWO, you know, to me, the best version of it is what you see now. These 3.
I think you have to include the Giant in that because because the Giant swings the balance. Because, you know, when Heenan raised a good point in that first Nitro after Bash of the Beach, now we know 3 guys ain't shit compared to the guys that came out. I mean, you've got the Steiners and Sting, but when you have the Giant come over on top of the 3 guys, it kind of deals like a mental blow, if you will.
That was its strongest, but if WWE were to induct, I don't think they would induct the Giant as a part of it. Because remember, when they inducted Scott Hall, they inducted Razor Ramon.
Right.
They would be inducting.
Well, because
Razor
was, I think because even if you take away what he did in the NWO, Razor Ramon's Hall of Fame worthy based on what WWE views as a Hall of Famer.
Well,
I mean, he had a great run. He was a Hall of Fame. He was a main eventer. He had one of the greatest WrestleMania matches of all time, one of the greatest SummerSlam matches of all time.
Now, help me remember, when they inducted Kevin Nash, did he go in as Kevin Nash or did he go in as Diesel?
He went in as Diesel because that's the WWE name.
Yeah.
But they'll talk about Diesel, Kevin Nash. I mean, everybody knows that those 2 names are synonymous with each other. And they would induct the Big Show as the Big Show.
Yeah, right.
Because you're marketing to your product of people. You know, like you assume that the audience that you are catering to at this point knows your product better than other people's products.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's an interesting thought. We could put that under the list of other shows that we might do, talking about who should be in the Hall of Fame, etc.
That'd be a fun show to do. It would not have bothered me at all to have seen them put Scott Hall in as Scott Hall.
Yeah.
It was the man Scott Hall behind Razor Ramon who would leave, join WCW, and be a part of one of the greatest factions of all time.
Yeah, but that's just not the way they do things. At that point, I think the reason why they induct people as like Razor Ramon as a character, because they want to distance themselves from the person, possibly. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Like the characters in the Hall of Fame, that way they don't look bad if, they say, oh, well, Scott Hall pulls a Chris Benoit, and they're like, well, Scott Hall's not in our Hall of Fame, Razor Ramon is.
Yeah, we own the character.
Right.
Yeah. Copyright symbol.
Right. Exactly. I mean, and I think that has a lot to do with it. I mean, especially with a guy like Scott Hall, he's known substance abuse and all that kind of stuff. So, And, I mean, they're the ones that popularized the Razor Ramon character. Without Razor Ramon, he doesn't become Scott Hall as part of the NWO. I mean, yeah, he was a decent success in the AWA, but nowhere near what he was after he became Razor Ramon and they pushed him to the moon.
Right.
So
what else do we have to cover, my man?
Hogan's promo, you really liked it. I thought it was just okay, him burying the kids. I did like the fact that, in theory, he said that he was just the conduit to open the doors so the outsiders would be trendsetters, and they were the new blood, and he was opening the door for them to come in and be the guys. But they played second banana to him throughout this whole thing.
No kidding.
And I thought it was ironic that Hogan mentions bringing in more outsiders or bringing in Bischoff's friends, which was ironic that, one, Bischoff ends up joining the NWO. Two, they brought in guys that were friends with Bischoff, like Scott Norton. Once Bischoff got in, I think it became a bastardized cronyism, is a good word for it, I believe. The end, you mentioned the Hogan challenging the Giant, but the end where Hogan calls out the entire locker room and guys come out, and then we get the typical WCW line that we're out of time. He's like, we'll come out here and we'll beat up everybody. And then Steiners, Arn Anderson, Faces of Fear, surround the ring. They pan up, and then Bischoff says we're out of time.
Yeah.
See, I always remember Shivani saying we're out of time because it was after Bischoff had left. After Bischoff had gone to the NWO, they did more of the we're out of time type gimmick.
Yeah, I was just reliving how I used to feel as a kid when I wanted to see more.
Yeah.
They baited you in there. By God, I wanted to see a brawl.
Did you like when they went to 3 hours?
I can't recall when that happened.
It was like around this time period. I think it was in like 97, 98, around there.
Hey, I didn't notice it, dude. I mean, the way I saw it, I was going to see all of Nitro from front to finish, whether it was 2 hours, 3, 4.
Right.
It didn't damn matter to this child.
Yeah.
I didn't care.
You're right. I just didn't know. No. I know that Raw's a chore to get through these days at 3 hours.
Oh, God. It really is. That and SmackDown, hard as hell to get through.
SmackDown's better because it's 2 hours. It just, especially after you watched Raw the night before and you watching SmackDown, you're like, holy shit, it's over?
Yeah, well, sometimes these things are a chore to get through because they suck.
Yeah, exactly.
That's when it really, that's when I really have to work extra hard and believe in myself. Through the whole thing, I can do this. I really can.
Get to the end. You're almost there.
Ugh.
That's going to do it for this edition of Nitro. Next week we'll see the fallout from this, moving forward, progression. You've got to see if the Giant's going to answer the challenge, which we know that he does, and just pushing toward Hog Wild.
Yeah, man.
Shaping up to be a decent little card. You've got Harlem Heat and the Steiners, Hogan and the Giant, Eddie Guerrero, Ric Flair.
Well, don't you have Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko as well?
That match hasn't been set yet, has it?
I think either that or someone came out of the streets in McElroy land and just whispered it into my ear. I could have swore I heard one of those guys.
It might be. I can't remember. Like I said, I'm just going based off the Nitro because, I could, of course, look it up and see, but then that would kind of ruin the build.
True. This is true.
All right, well, if you don't have anything else, we'll wrap it up.
I sure don't, man.
Yeah, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for clicking the link that brought you here. You've been listening to At a Combined Weight on PWInsiderElite.com. Make sure that you give us a follow at a combined weight on Twitter. Shoot us an email at a combined weight @gmail.com. Robert, give us your plethora of social media.
Instagram, Twitter, it's being_large. Facebook, You can shoot me a file there at Robert McElroy, actor.
Yeah, book him in your next movie, commercial. Invite him, pay him to come play checkers with you if you live in the Atlanta metro area.
I gigolo myself in a variety of fashions, so not out of the realm of possibility.
If you got the cash, like DiBiase used to say, everybody's got a price.
Everybody's got a price, no doubt.
All right, thanks for clicking the link that brought you here. We'll see you next time.
There's no way I can blame you. I can see what is wrong with me while I curse all the liars. Put me down and neglect me.